How's it going?
It's going great.
Yeah, so we talked about this last week before recording our podcast, and then about doing a pairing session on Level. And I decided last Tuesday, I was just sitting around in the evening, sipping some bourbon, and decided, why don't I just record myself building a feature? So I did that, threw it up on YouTube, and the response seemed really good. So here we are, and we've been talking about doing this for a while, and I'm
hmm
glad we're recording it. So,
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited about the stack that you're using. So
yeah,
I will. I'm not familiar with it, although I did watch your last one. So I was like, I should do my homework and like at least catch up with where Derek
yeah,
is.
yeah.
And so I have like I know a bit of Elm, but not so much Phoenix
Hmm.
or GraphQL. So I'll have lots of questions, and hopefully I will be like representative of the average listener,
Yeah,
so
that's
that
cool.
my questions will be useful to them too.
Yep, good. And I will say, like right now, so I'm sort of at the place in the project where um, I've been doing like building this prototype for the last 8 months or something, a crazy long time when I actually look at the Git history. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of that, like I've just sort of was playing around with colors, playing around with layouts, and I think now, since I've been working with Steve and working on sort of the visual side of it, it's going to look a bit different. And in the conversations I've had with folks about sort of how the product should be structured, I think it's going to be structured a bit differently than my prototype was. So
Mm.
I'm sort of at this point taking a step back from the UI and working mostly on back end stuff while I sort of flesh out like how the user interface is going to look and flow and stuff like that. The
Cool.
nice thing about the way the stack is divided, this is like my first actual like single page application that I'm building. I've always been a proponent of like server side rendered HTML, but I think an application like this where it's extremely real time, like you want, the UI to always be representative of what's happening on the server. I think it like makes a lot of sense for this to actually be single page. So,
hmm
so there's a nice kind of division there where I can build out different features in small chunks and build it in Phoenix and GraphQL and get like all that teed up and ready to go, so that the when I get to the UI layer, I can just start leveraging the API basically. So,
Yeah, sounds good. Do you have any concern that the back end, so I tend to, when I'm developing, start at the UI level
yeah, I
and
do
let
too.
that drive where the back end's going?
I do too.
Any concern that you're going to have a mismatch when you get there?
I think yes. So I don't want to go too long in this phase. I'm basically kind of stalling a bit, like because I don't want to start investing too much in the UI before I have it like a bit more solid, at least sketched out in my
hmm
notebook. So
hmm
yeah, I don't want to stay in this phase for too long because I think I will inevitably drift and have to like rework things. But
Yeah,
there are definitely some like known things that need to get built, and I'm kind of sticking to like the simplest known
gotcha.
things. Yeah, but
Cool.
that's definitely a concern. So,
Okay.
all right, well, I'm going to share my screen with you,
Cool. I will
and
unvideo myself,
cool.
but I will be here in voice and
All
spirit.
right, very good. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So, another thing I did last week, I
hmm
quietly open sourced the repository.
Oh,
Um,
hey.
yeah, so this
Cool.
is currently living at level HQ/level on GitHub. And
Nice.
some folks have already noticed because there's some stories
Hey,
already happening.
that's
So,
kind of a big step, actually. Like
yeah,
in like a philosophical sense, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
I like it.
And I've already started to get some pull requests too. Like we can dive more into that on the podcast. But
Really? Oh,
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah.
Interesting. Are you using Tailwind on this, by the way?
I've decided that I want to. Yeah, so like the UI layer is going to start from scratch, and I've been like following Adam's stuff, and like I'm pretty well sold on the utility framework style. So yeah, I want to use
Yeah.
it.
I love when my worlds collide like this.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah, and
Cool.
it helps too that Steve, my designer, who's been doing the logo and is going to help me with marketing stuff and hopefully in-app stuff too, is like a big time contributor on Tailwind. So yeah, it's sort of all
Totally.
like good synergy
A-
there.
And we should say that that's Steve Schoger,
Yes.
Schoger. Throw him a little love.
Steve Schoger, follow him on Twitter. He has lots of design hot tips that are
Mhm.
like always mind blowing to me. Like,
And I worked with him on the landing page for the Code Quality Challenge,
Hmm.
and he did a great job on that. So
Yep.
he's good.
And we should dive into code soon, but I actually should I tease out the like 99% final logo for level?
Oh yeah, I'm interested.
Okay. All right. Um, let me find that sketch file. Okay. This is like this is sort of a little bit messy because it's our workspace that we've been working on for iterating on the logo, but I will drag this over. Ta-da!
Ooh, nice.
So
I like it.
we were playing around with colors and such, but these are
Very cool.
this is sort of the so it's sort of a turquoise color. The idea is that it's calming
Mm,
and not super ubiquitous like this like startup blue. I really didn't want it to be like the startup blue that everyone uses, you know.
mm-hmm. The Stripe ripoff, Startup Blue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and so
The
this is it.
the font looks or the typeface is very friendly.
Yep.
It
Yep.
seems kind of
Yeah, no
approachable.
no hard edges on that.
Hmm.
So, and this is so the analogy for this is actually rock stacking, which if you like Google Balance or Zen or something like that, you'll
Mm-hmm.
see like that'll be all over Google Images is stacking rocks, and so it's a very abstract rock stacking analogy right there.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and so
I dig it.
I've been anxious to start like branding things, like using the avatar on the YouTube channel and
Mm.
getting some Twitter stuff set up and the GitHub org. So now I think did I do it already? Let me see. Yes. So
Oh, there it is. Cool.
yeah,
Congrats, man. That's a nice step.
yeah,
Look at that contribution graph. That's funny.
yeah. I know. I know.
Can
It's
you
been
tell where Derek quit his job?
zoop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
GraphQL Elixir and Elm it is tagged.
it is. Yep.
Good
I
stuff.
need to come. By the way, I need to come up with a name for this stack. I had one that I like. What was I calling it? The peg stack, like Phoenix, Elm, GraphQL.
It's not bad.
I don't know.
My friend, I've seen this referred to. A friend of mine sent me a thing that referred to this as like the hipster stack or something.
Yeah, there's like a repository out there. It's like the Elm hipster stack or something.
Yeah. Well, like that's too abstract a name because
Yeah,
hipster is tomorrow's curmudgeon.
yeah. I think it doesn't. That won't age well. So, anyways,
So
okay,
code.
let's code. So I've been just like filing GitHub issues, like a few tasks ahead of where I'm at, just to keep myself, give myself a little mini roadmap. So
That's smart.
yeah,
Reducing overwhelm.
right. Yeah, I don't want there to be hundreds of issues in here. Just like,
Well, I just mean like you do actually have hundreds of things to do.
yes,
But so you open this up and there's only five things there. You're like, okay, well, I'll do one of the five.
yep, yep. Yeah, and that's sort of been my approach. Like, I think I want to start building out like a spreadsheet of just like individual tasks, just as I think of them, and kind of flesh out what the roadmap looks like to get an idea of scope. But I don't want that to all live in here right away. I want
Totally.
this to be peaceful.
Mm.
So the last screencast I did, which is pretty much the last meaningful issue I worked on, was being able to list groups that belong to a space in level. And there were some things that held me back from fully fleshing out that issue. One being like I had no notion of group membership built in to the data model. So like a group could exist, but I couldn't know who actually belonged to that group or who was allowed to see that group. So listing groups is still too permissive. Like because you're able to set a group as private, and when a group is private, only people who are in that group are allowed to know that it exists.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually I did do this offline. I added kind of the basic data model for group memberships. So now there's some additional things we can build off from there, like listing group memberships for a particular user in the API, ability to invite a user to a group. This one's a bit more involved because it's going to involve like some kind of invitations table.
Mm-hmm.
We could also just add the ability to update a group. I don't know if any of these strike your interest.
Well, I haven't seen how Phoenix, for example, does like migration type things.
Okay. Yep.
So if you think that's an interesting thing, then maybe that. But also there might be it might be worth just hitting a simple one
Yeah.
uh, to start.
Yeah. Let's start with like updating group attributes.
Okay,
And that will kind of show like the sort of how ecto change sets work and how we
cool.
persist changes to the database. And then we could, if we're feeling ambitious, we could and have time, we could try the next one.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, my little to-do list, we want to add basically a GraphQL mutation, and this is the mechanism for making changes on the server side as opposed to queries. There's really just two, well, there's three things. There's queries, mutations, and subscriptions. And subscriptions are for like WebSocket real-time updates to push down to the client. Um, so, and these are just kind of all sit on a top level namespace, and you give them a name like update group. And so, yeah, that's sort of that's the task.
Okay.
So I like to start with sort of like an integration test or a system test for these as I build out new mutations. So I'll pop into
Mm-hmm.
one existing one. This one's the one for creating a group. Um, how familiar are you with GraphQL syntax?
Not so familiar,
Okay. So
but I did watch your last screencast.
yeah, okay. And folks should, yeah, check that out. You'll see sort of the syntax in there too. But basically, there's like this mutation thing, and we can pass in arguments. This is just an arbitrary name that we give the mutation for when we're running it, and you can use that to like reference back to server logs or something. So it's really just internal documentation. Um, and here we're saying, okay, this is the create group mutation, and these are the attributes that I care about from the response. So we can make this as minimal or as fleshed out as we want. Like I could ask for all the possible group attributes back, or I could just ask for the name back if that's all I care about. So it sort of gives you, similar to queries, it gives you the ability to specify what you want back. Um, yeah. So this is
So
like,
can I?
oh, go ahead. Yep.
So this top thing is almost like a documentation string. That first thing.
Yeah. Right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So okay, and then the next bit is variable interpolation. Is that what's happening there, or are you just not defining what variables go into this thing?
Yeah, so these are basically this is like a function signature. So we're saying that like along with when I run this mutation, I can pass a JSON object containing
Mm.
variables, and
Hmm.
I'm basically saying these are the ones that I will accept, and I'm basically then saying like, okay, I will accept the name variable, and then I specify down here where I actually want to use that name variable. And so I'm saying like, I want to run this mutation and pass a name, and I want the name to be set to whatever I passed in and as the name in the variables. Does that
Got
make
it.
sense? So
Hmm.
I could just run this in the browser and or wherever and just like
Hmm.
not use these and just pass things directly. But
Mm-hmm.
then you end up with weirdness. Like you don't really want to do that in production because like you don't want to interpolate untrusted input directly into the query. So you want to use this is like a parameterized query basically where
Okay.
the
All
variables are sent in a separate object.
right. So the first thing is kind of like saying this is the signature for this thing.
Yep.
The second thing is actually the call to it,
Yep.
and then the third thing is, hey, on success, return these attributes, and on errors, return these.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
So I can
Cool.
actually I'm going to show you just real quick just to like drive this home. Um, we'll boot up my server. One of the things I love about GraphQL is the graphical thing, which
Yeah, that seemed really cool.
yeah. Kick this up for the. I got this like token weird thing. Okay, so whoops. So like this is the top level. It's you can either say query or mutation,
Okay.
and but query is optional. So like if I omit that and just say like give
Hmm.
me back the viewer, oops, ID, then it just runs a query.
Got it.
So I could say mutation and then, oops, let me make this a little bigger.
What is viewer, by the way?
Viewer is the currently logged in user.
Gotcha. And you're
So
effectively logged in because you have that authorization thing over on
that's
the
right.
right.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And so that's sort of a pattern that was established by Facebook, I think, where sort of everything at the root on queries, there's only a viewer. So every query that you run has to basically spider the graph from the user. So if I want like
Mm.
the space that the user belongs to, then I have to
Hmm.
go viewer, and then that's of a type user, and then users have a space attached to them. So
Interesting.
sort of a way of like scoping all of the queries that you run. They're scoped by the current viewer, and so you can then do things like limit. You can customize the results returned based on who's viewing it.
Are, so, but I imagine there are things that are not associated with the currently logged in user.
Yeah, like so far I haven't encountered anything for
Hmm.
my data model that's global
Interesting.
outside of like that applies to all users.
Hmm.
I mean, I think like if you're a service, if you're a public service like GitHub, for example, then I think they have more things in their root type that are like just public things that don't require
Got it.
special authorization. So
Okay.
there may be things like that. Most of my data though will be require authorization, I think.
Okay.
So I could just say like,
Nice. Got my own group.
yep. And then, I can also explore like what, so I can go into this mutation and I can say, okay, create group mutation. It takes these arguments. The name is required. The other ones
Hmm.
are
You can
not
tell by the
required
bang. That means
because of the
required.
bang. Exactly. And then it returns this create group payload. And so I can drill into that and I can see all the things that it
Oh man.
returns.
You know what's great is schemas.
Yeah, I know. It's
I
awesome.
think having a schema, but schema between your back and your front end, that sounds just awesome.
Yeah, it's great because I mean, one of the big problems with the REST API is always having to like validate input, and like it's just a headache that you don't even have to think about with GraphQL.
Hmm. Cool.
So I can say like, give me back the ID of the group and whether it was successful, and I can run this, and so it did it.
Interesting. And so if this weren't successful, you wouldn't get back the group ID. Obviously,
Right,
you would get
group.
success false, and then that group ID stuff, which just wouldn't be populated.
Yeah, so then group would be nil in this case, or null. Yeah. So let
Okay.
me see if I can.
S-
There we go. Yep. Successful.
Cool. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So there's no success. Success and group aren't like linked together. They just success is a boolean, and then group is more data.
That's right. Yep. And
Okay.
mind you, this is a pattern that I sort of like. This is not this whole like success errors thing is not established by GraphQL directly. Like it's sort of up to the user or the developer to figure out how they want to do this. And there is a way to pass like there's like a high level errors object if you send in like a malformed query. But it's sort of like, from what I've gathered, it's not best practice to use that top level errors for validation errors. Like it should be like the top level errors object should be used only for like malformed, like if the developer made a mistake writing the query, and not if the user supplied information is invalid. So I
Sounds
sort of
legit.
established this own pattern for myself where I always pass a success boolean and this errors object that may be empty or it may have things in it, depending on whether there are validation errors.
Okay.
So that's sort of what's going on there. So I could say instead, I could say like mutation create group, and I could say name string. I could go like this, and then down
Mm.
here I could say name And let me just like get back the name too. And that works too. So
Got it.
yeah, so the cool
Cool.
thing about this type of test is I could actually, this has no actual data in it. You know, it's fully parameterized, I guess. So I could just copy this straight out of my test, throw it into GraphQL, and play around with it, which is
I dig it.
pretty cool. All right, so um, so this is like a full. It's like a connect con case. Con stands for connection. So this is like a full. Basically, uses it exercises the full Phoenix controller stack, and like
Okay.
so it starts out with a connection object, and I add some authentication onto there. I basically fabricate a sign up, and I authenticate the connection. So now like that auth header is set, and then I can basically post to my GraphQL endpoint whatever query I want and make some assertions about the response.
Cool. Is that percent curly a hash syntax?
Yeah, like it's called a map in Elixir,
Okay.
and it's effectively a hash. And
Okay.
these are basically symbols. Like, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So you'll see it feels pretty Ruby-ish actually.
Yeah. And one other thing on 32, for example, you're looks like you're matching a tuple or something close to it. I guess without the
Yes.
percent, it's a tuple.
Yep, that's right. This is a
So does that? So that's saying like, I'm guessing the first thing is a status, and so if there were an error or a failure or something, the first thing wouldn't be okay, and so this would blow up in some sort of noisy way.
that's right. Yep. So like in this case, I'm fairly confident that this will work fine. So I just go ahead and do the pattern match and extract out the things I care about from the second argument of the tuple. But if there was like a scenario where running this function, like I wanted to handle multiple scenarios, then I would set up a case statement, and I would then have like successive pattern matches where maybe the first branch I would pattern match on okay, and the second one I would maybe pattern match on error or something. So
Okay. Cool.
yeah. But this is
Funny,
basically a nice way to like destructure, and say I didn't care about the space at all, then I could just like go like that, and now, you know, I've only extracted one piece of data from this response.
Gotcha. Yep. Okay. Cool. So the response is going to be a map, and you're pulling out specific things from the map.
Yep, that's right.
Oh, okay. I see. So like it looks for the user symbol and then assigns it to a local called user.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
So it's a very
That sounds handy.
It's a very powerful like destructuring type of setup here. And then like by convention, the setup block always returns, and there's implicit return at the bottom, similar to Ruby, and it always returns an okay. Well, you can, I think, short circuit and return an error too if you want to like cause the test to blow up. But in success cases, you always return okay, and then whatever you want to pass to your tests, and then here in my test block, I can choose to extract whatever I care about from this. So for this first test, like I don't actually need the user in the space. I only need the connection object. So or struct, not object, I guess. But so I'm extracting that here, and maybe down the line. See, in this one, I needed the user, so I chose to also like pull that in.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
It's nice that your tests end up with explicit parameters as opposed to implicit access to everything in the environment, the test world.
Yeah, that's very nice to not just have instance variables floating around and
functional programming.
Yep. Okay.
Into it.
So I'm a big fan of like copying existing files and only making the changes to them that I need to. So I'm going to do that.
Sure.
Here. I'm going to say
a tried and true solution.
Yep. This is the update group test. And I kind of like one test file per mutation, and that way I can just like test however many scenarios I want for that particular one. So we'll call this the update group test, and this is going to be update group, and name will not be required. Yeah, and I think it should basically have a very similar return type.
I'm assuming if you called this with no like is private Boolean, it wouldn't set is private to null, right? It would just kind of no op that.
I think that is correct, but I'm actually not sure. I was thinking the
Okay.
exact same thing as I was typing this.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm assuming that you would have to explicitly set it to nil or something or null in order for it to assign null. But
That seems like a reasonable place to be.
yeah, but this will be a good. I mean, we can definitely like
Yep.
test that in our tests and see what
Let's.
happens. All right, so setup is pretty standard. That's good. This time we want to update test that it updates a group given valid data. I've been sort of setting up. I've held off using any kind of like fabrication or factory girl type of library that you would use in Ruby because I found like it seems like a lot of people just kind of get by with just defining functions for these things. So I have this test helpers module where I tend to define like a valid resource name params function that just like always returns valid ones and it seems to work pretty well. And I also have like these.
Sure. I mean, that's all factory bot girl is really doing.
Yeah, yeah. So in this case, actually, I'm not going to. I think I'm just going to say like, what if we rename this thing? So, well, first of all, we actually need to create. We need to create a group.
Right.
So,
Yep.
I'm going to. So I have this insert group helper as well that just does. Oh, and I need to pass in. So let's look at where that's defined just for the heck of it. Yeah. So insert group takes a creator, which is just a user, and optional params to merge in if we want to customize them. Otherwise, it'll just use whatever valid group params we have set up, and then it'll call this create group function that I already created previously.
Okay.
So for this, I actually need the user.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to pass in user, and I'm going to extract the group. And then I want my variables to be, oh, and actually I forgot. We didn't tell it what group we want to update. So we also need an ID, and that is required.
Okay. Uppercase I, uppercase D.
Yeah, so that is I don't know if this is a GraphQL thing or an absinthe thing, but
Absinthe is what?
Sorry, absinthe is the GraphQL library for Elixir.
Okay.
I think it's actually defined in GraphQL, if I'm not mistaken.
We don't have to dig into it. I was just
Yeah.
noticing.
ID is a scalar type.
Okay.
Like always a string. Yeah. Okay. Passing ID. That's good. So what am I doing here? Our variables need to be ID, group.id, and let's give it a new name. New name.
We probably want to pass an old name into insert group.
Good idea.
Cool. And then you just did group.id. Is group a what'd you call it, struct,
It is a struct. Yep.
and you're grabbing a value out of it.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. So you can just, yeah, the dot syntax works for
So
doing that.
a struct is just like a bag of data, right?
Yep. It's like under the covers, there's a map, I think, that has
Mm-hmm.
the actual data in it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like a way to, yeah, actually, I'll throw this in here too. So when we run this, we can just see
It's
what
funny.
the,
I've been running a lot of Haskell,
yeah.
and so like you calling IO is like, no, stay at IO.
Is
In
that
Haskell land, you try
danger
to
line?
keep. Yeah, and IO is where all the, like the bad stuff happens in Haskell, more or
Okay.
less. And so you're
Okay.
trying like you always try to keep your code as pure as possible and only reach into IO when like totally necessary.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, this is good. Oh, by the way, there's this other thing. Like, I think this is a module level variable. I don't.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what the name for it. Maybe it's called a module variable. I don't know what it's exactly called, but it's basically lets you define something that is within scope anywhere that you use it in the module. So it's
Okay.
just like a module global or whatever.
Interesting.
Okay. Like I have my Elixir auto formatter set up, so this like funky indentation, like I probably wouldn't have done that on my own, but like it just
Sure.
automatically happens for me. So auto
Would you,
formatting for the win.
yeah, if you threw JSON response, if you did a carriage return after the assert, oh, I guess it's well, yeah, maybe not. I guess they're not two arguments to. That's just one argument to assert, right?
That's correct. Yeah, this basically
Okay,
evaluates to a Boolean. Well,
gotcha.
and assert. What the cool thing is when we run this, you'll see like in Elixir, there's not, or in the X unit, I guess the test framework, it always tells you like when there's a mismatch, it says left hand side was this, right hand side was this, and it like I feel like there's never that weird like argument ordering
Yep,
issue like you see in Ruby
yep.
assert equal type of things.
Love it. That's such a nice little thing.
Yeah,
Like not having to remember where the expected and where the actual was.
yeah, and I like that there's just like I think almost all the time I just see people using assert and it knows that you're testing equality here. So like the test result when it fails basically explains like you expected this to equal this, but left hand side was this, right hand side was this. So
Really? Is there some sort of how though? I would assume the right hand side would get evaluated, or like the JSON response equal thing would be like an expression that gets evaluated.
I don't know exactly how it does that.
Does Fiend Elixir have macros?
It does. Yeah,
I bet assert is a macro then, and it rewrites this into an assert equal
perhaps.
or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so I'm just gonna like nuke these. Updates a group given valid data, and this should be yeah.
So 44 through 47
Mm-hmm.
is like your kind of generic like do the thing code.
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, this is like making the actual post to the server, exercising that full flow, passing in these
The
two
headers
arguments.
are like grab the stuff out of or like authenticate me, I guess.
Yeah, let's
No,
see
that's already
what.
happened.
Yeah, let's see what's going on here. Oh, so all that's doing is like setting a content type.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah. So the interesting thing about GraphQL, or one of them, I guess, is that there's one endpoint.
Yep.
It's always going to be slash GraphQL.
That's right.
Cool. Into it.
All right. We shall run this, and yeah, we'll at least get to see what a group looks like. But then the rest is gonna like fail pretty fantastically.
Okay.
This is like some kind of small bug in Phoenix that got fixed in master, I think.
Mm.
Okay. So this is what our group. So like it knows Elixir knows what what we're naming this struct, so it's not just a generic map. But then under the
Mm.
covers, it's effectively a map.
Hmm. Cool. And it looks like there's metadata too
Yeah.
in Elixir.
Yep. So that's so like there's so Ecto sort of is providing some sugar around like you can just define a struct yourself, but Ecto, which is sort of like the active record of Elixirland,
Hmm.
does that under the covers and then does a little bit more for you. So we can take a look at that DSL and how that works.
Cool.
But yeah, really, it's like not super intimidating because just under the covers, it's just data.
Love it.
And you'll notice too that they're like it's almost impossible to do n+1 queries because associations are never eager loaded.
Mm. Nice.
So if I called like creator on this group, it would be like, nope, not loaded. Sorry.
Love it. That's cool. So okay, yeah, cool.
So as expected, we got like this mutation does not exist error.
Cannot query field update group on root mutation type. Interesting. Okay.
It's a little, yeah, it's a little cryptic, huh?
So I guess it seems like under the covers, this is kind of like its own query
Yeah.
against something.
I'm guessing that like, yeah, it's like called a mutation, but really it's just a query that is scoped under
In the root.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, let's implement some stuff.
Left.
So under level web, here's our schema, but there's not much in. Well, actually, I have my mutations defined in this root level schema. So you see, there's like queries here, and at the root, there's only viewer, like we saw, and then here's all our mutations defined.
Okay. And this is using helpers from
Absinthe.
that library.
Yep.
Absinthe.
Yep.
Okay.
So this is all like a custom DSL that they built. So
Cool.
let's do this. And these describe strings here get used in the documentation. So see, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty nice.
I like it.
Update a group. Field. Update group. And like these technically kind of return the same payload.
Is that what you're specifying in type, or is it the type that it takes?
It's the type that it returns.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Really?
Yeah, so these args, this is what it takes. And
Okay.
then this is what it returns.
Okay.
So it takes an ID, which is a non-null ID. And it takes a name, which is a string. It takes a description, which is a string. And it takes then is private, which is a Boolean. And then this resolve function, basically we're telling it what function does the actual work when that gets called.
So like that's where it delegates to.
Yep.
Okay.
And this is basically this like ampersand thing is a way to
Yeah.
pass a reference to a specific function. And
Okay.
the /2 is the arity. So you could technically, define the same function of the same name with different arity, and that's totally okay.
Interesting.
And these, like, the fact that it lives in this module called group resolver, like, is just totally up to us, you know, like you can define it anywhere. It's just kind of my way of organizing them. So
Okay. And that is private is underscore cased, I'm noticing. But
Yeah,
it seems like not in the GraphQL land.
good observation. So things are like snake cased by default. Like that's the convention in Elixir, but the convention in
Mm-hmm.
GraphQL is camel case. Or yeah, is that right? Camel case. So it just automatically camelizes them. Um,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Typical programmer nit noticing.
Yep. And yeah. So it doesn't like that we haven't defined this payload type.
Cool.
And so I think I'm putting those payloads under this mutations module. And I just included, like at the top of here,
Mm.
I'm including this types and then this type. So this is like a little bit convoluted. Like I may need to like relook at how I'm organizing this, but this types thing then just like imports a bunch of these other files. Because that's one
Okay.
thing, like this could just end up being like giant files. So I'm like trying
Yep.
to look for the best way to like break them down into smaller chunks.
Mm-hmm.
So here we've got our payloads. We've got our create group payload. I don't really like the amount of duplication that happens in here, but I don't really know the best way to get around it.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't worry about it then for now.
Yeah, like I think I could probably like define some custom macros or like augment this DSL, but that requires like Elixir metaprogramming and doesn't seem like a great use of time.
Perhaps not.
At least not yet. Okay. That's good. Holy Toledo. Wow. Function undefined. Yep.
Wow.
It's a giant. I think it's like
Oh,
this.
I guess they just the stack trace, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this absinthe resolution struct, which has like obviously a bunch of stuff in it.
Got it.
Okay. So let's come over here. So like these resolver functions just need to return a tuple, so either okay or error, and then the second argument is a map containing the data that it expects to map to the payload type.
Okay.
So like if I wanted to, for example, if I wanted to return those top level errors I was talking about, then
Yeah.
I would return error from here. But like I've
Mm-hmm.
made the choice, like validation errors will always just go in this, like in the body of the response. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Okay.
this takes arguments, and then this takes this context. And since we're going to always be interested in who the currently authenticated user is, we will extract that.
So you can
And
do nested destructuring.
yes, you can,
Nice.
which is super cool.
Well, I love good destructuring.
Yeah, and that's what like I started to miss it a lot in Ruby land when I was playing around with Elixir a bunch. Okay. Let's see. We just like for the heck of it, I'm just gonna like I want to see our tests make progress. So let's just.
Will this blow up because we said that there'll be a group in a successful response?
It's actually that is not enforced
Okay.
anywhere in particular. Oh, that's interesting. Key description not found in. Oh. Oh, I see what I did.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's actually not important to. Well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we should just assert that like the description stayed the same. Like I could just say
I'd
like,
uh,
or would you remove it? I don't know.
I'd remove it if it were me.
Okay. We can just pull it out of here.
At least until we're green.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. So check out this bad boy.
That's pretty good. Code, left, right. Cool. Yeah, that's got to be a macro.
Yeah. And it gives you a little diff and like little red green highlights here.
Into it.
Yeah. It's really nice. Okay. So this is like a flow actually that I haven't quite figured out the best approach for, but like, so well, yeah. So would you, here's a question I'll throw it at you. So I want to implement like an update group function in my group's context. It's just a module. And that specifically, I want that to be unit tested. So would you just like start TDDing that like implementation of that method and then come back to here and add it in?
I would probably actually call it from right here and
Okay.
pretend it existed.
And then that'll obviously fail. So then would you go straight to implementing the update group function in the context of just getting this test passing and then go back and add tests later specifically for that, like to unit test that function, or how would you approach it?
Yeah, it's a good question. If this thing is simple, I might just let it get tested through this other interface.
Yeah. Yeah.
As soon as it got more hairy, I might add unit tests. But
Okay.
I've also sometimes will just drop down right away and write unit tests.
Yeah.
So
This is one where it's like, it feels like a chicken and egg problem. Like I need the function to make this pass, but I also kind of want to like develop that with unit tests in isolation, but I also don't want to deviate
sure.
from, yeah. So
Yeah, when I'm doing my strictest TDD, I do like what we've done outside in, where it's integration test until I'm called upon to write like some sort of new method
Yeah.
that is going to have some logic in it, and then it's like, okay, let me start by calling that method. Doesn't exist. I get like a no method error,
Yep.
and then I will create a unit test for that new method, and then
Yep.
TDD that out, and then flip back up to the top level.
Makes sense. That's good. I also want to be aware of like not over testing. Like I think I've sometimes swung too far in the direction of like too much redundancy. Like maybe, like you said, maybe it's sufficient to just stick with the integration test for now. And
Yeah, my views on this are in flux, I would say.
yeah, that's good to hear. 'Cause I feel like you're a testing expert, and I feel like my views are always in flux about the best way to do things too. So I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Totally.
Okay, so I know I want to handle. I need a case here because update group could return an error or could return okay. So let's say update group and oh, okay. So this is interesting. Actually, we probably want to. So there's an ID in this args for the group, and we probably want to query for that first and then pass it into this update group. So we pass in like
Query for to make sure it exists.
yeah. And if it doesn't exist, we want to error out. So actually, okay, this is a good, yeah. I think I know what we want to do here. Let me pop over here real quick to my groups module to see if I have a lookup function yet. And I don't. So what I want to do is say, Like I want to do that first, and
Mm-hmm.
then depending on if that is successful, then I want to do something like that.
Okay.
Um, Here's another case where like another function that I want to implement. So I'll probably just do that. There's this cool thing that was added to Elixir that's called like a width. I think it's width. Let me just Google it real quick so that we.
Mm-hmm.
That basically lets you perform successive calls like this and use the result from the previous call on the next one. But if there's like if the pattern fails to match at any of the steps, then it'll like short circuit. So
Cool.
so I can say I can basically chain multiple things together, but like say this doesn't pattern match and it's like error instead, then that'll
Yep.
get dumped down here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's exactly what we want to use here, actually.
This is feeling very Haskell-y to me.
Is it?
Yeah. Or Elmy.
Yeah.
It's like a maybe map.
Yeah. That's what that is what it feels like. Okay. So it's like kind of weird syntax, like a backwards arrow and then a comma.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've referenced this
Yeah.
openmymind.net article. Okay. And then
That backwards arrow is like Haskell syntax as
Is
well.
it?
That's how. Yeah.
I bet this was inspired by,
I think it was.
and I'm going to let the formatter fix my indentation. I think it probably wants these aligned, but we'll see what it does. So we have this do and then we have this like else and
Oh, so it goes to the else if you.
yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of weird. This is
Do we want do we want a with, or do we want like a case? I mean, this is basically a nested case,
it's
right?
a nested case. Like the with is a way to get around nesting cases.
Got it. Okay.
And I think this is what we want because we want to, like, if this fails, then I want to dump whatever the error was out to GraphQL so that it'll like say like not, and that would actually come out as a top level error. Like if you, which is maybe what we want. I don't know. We can play around with it in tests too and see what the output looks like. And this is just like matching on anything. So assuming that like we only get here if one of these errors out. So, okay. And then inside of here, whatever variables we've set. So like if it makes it to this point, group will be whatever we set it to here. So we want to we got auto formatted. Okay. So I'm gonna come over here, find group. So we actually probably want to pass the user in here because otherwise we don't have any scoping. Like without that, they could just like look up a group from any space. So
I mean, yeah, you could do that now, or you could make the test pass.
yeah, okay. Good point. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Maybe. I mean,
I don't know.
it's up to you.
I famously like try to think like 5 steps ahead, so I
Yeah,
do sometimes
we've
get
written a
ahead.
fair amount of code without running our tests and such, so I'd vote for.
Okay, all right. So we can say like repo dot. I'm still committing these to memory. I think it's repo dot get, and then I already aliased my group schema. So, so the repo is contains functions for actually doing interactions with the database. So with Elixir, or with the way Ecto works, when you're making a mutation to something, you build up your changes in what's called a change set, and then you call repo.update and you pass in your change set, and that actually applies the changes to the database. So the two are decoupled, which is sort of nice. So I'm going to say repo.get, and then I think this takes a schema, and then it takes the ID. And then
you want to run the tests?
Yeah, let's see.
What's the error?
See, I'm trying to spot where it. I think I know what's going on, but I want the error message to tell us explicitly.
Yeah, I want to. Invalid value returned from resolver. Resolving field updated group.
Defined at this place, resolving on empty
map got a non-empty map of a group. Do you want to go pull up on that schema line?
Yeah. Let's see.
Or are we? It's probably where we're actually using it.
Yeah, it's right here.
So I'm guessing our payload that's coming back. Do you think it's the payload or the?
Yeah. So I'll tell you what I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Things can get a little hairy when you have a pattern match that fails. And I think that's what's happening. Where's my file resolver? I think
we had some new. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, so I think this actually doesn't return a tuple; it just returns nil or the struct. So I'm actually. Oh, and how do I pattern match this not nil? Let's see.
What don't you want to return that tuple from find group?
Yeah, so find group doesn't actually return a tuple.
But don't we want it to?
Oh, yeah, so I should just change. Yeah, good point. I could just say well, so if this is nil, then I need to return an error. Is there an...
Do you want a case here?
There you go.
Or pattern match, I mean?
Yeah. So if it's nil, then we want error group not found. Otherwise...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Want to rerun? See if it works. Oh, also, we had some new warnings. It looked like.
Yeah, let's look at those.
Oh, that seems to have gone away.
Okay. Okay. Unused alias groups in update group test. For whatever reason, this warning got output here.
Probably because you have an IO thing that's calling.
Yeah. So we have this alias is left over from the test file that I copied, and since we're not actually using this, that's what the warning is. So I can just delete that.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to kill that inspect too?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. All right. So our error was now like this create group thing is not defined, which is progress.
Yep. Seems good.
So let's take care of that. Oh wait, create group. Oh yeah, okay. Update group is not defined. Yeah. So update group, and we're passing in the group and the params.
Is the group really just an ID?
Well, in this case,
Or we pass the whole thing
we're
and then
passing
some
the
new
whole
stuff?
thing because we're like loading it up to ensure that it exists first, getting all the existing data, and then we're like gonna merge the changes into this and persist it. So,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so we need to so do I have a change set? Let me see if I have a change set defined. Okay, so this is a schema definition for ecto, and this is part of the DSL here, where we're defining that we have the schema, this table named groups, and these are the fields that are on there, and these are some associations. And also defined on here, we have this change set function that takes a group and takes some attributes and basically builds up this change set that we can use for persisting changes. So
Okay.
it kind of all starts with this cast function that takes the attributes, and then we give it a list of the things that we are willing to accept. And actually, I think we should probably create a change set that is only for making updates. Like, I don't want these things to be updatable. So I really only want to cast the things. This is sort of like whitelisting the parameters that I'm willing to accept. And in this case, we only want to accept these. So,
Okay.
And like, we're not going to validate that name is required either on this one.
Right.
So I'm going to call this the update change set. And we're going to nuke these. We're going to nuke this. This is kind of interesting. What this does is basically delegates uniqueness checking to the database instead of doing it in code like Active Record
That's
does.
cool.
Yeah, so like it'll just attempt, it won't do like a lookup to see is this unique or not, and then you still may run into race conditions. It instead just delegates that to the database, and if we get a uniqueness violation back, then it'll like propagate that back as a validation error.
Seems legit.
It's pretty sweet. Okay, so we want to take our group and we want to pass it to our group.update change set params. And then we want to say repo.update. Aha. So it didn't actually happen. Let's see.
Everything other than that, it's working great.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I spot it. I didn't actually pass my args into the update.
Oh, and params can be empty.
Yep.
Hmm.
Maybe
Do you want that?
Maybe they shouldn't be allowed to be empty, huh?
Yeah. Seems wrong.
So like if I undefined or private, what? Oh, okay. So now, so this is what would have happened. It's like
Oh, I see.
it had an optional argument, so we could get away with just one, but now it's not optional, and so it's blowing up as we expect.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm less. I was just thinking like, should this require? It probably should. If you just call this with our like group, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll take a look at this warning.
No. And you said before that router warning is a extra
Yeah,
thing.
that one is like a Phoenix problem. Hey, we're green.
Okay. Yeah, Phoenix. Cool.
Group resolver. So I didn't actually use this user at all.
Right.
So I could just like, that would suppress the warning and say like we're pattern matching on this, but we're not actually using it. Or we could just nuke this all together and just like make this a
Yeah.
Unused.
Yeah, I'd probably do the latter.
And so then we will want to, I mean, we will use it once we kind of add that user scoping to this, but
Yeah. But who knows in how many months you'll add that.
yeah. Until then, you can willy-nilly update anyone's groups.
You only got one user right now. Why worry about it?
How do you feel about like should we document these things first before committing, or
What do you mean doc? Oh, like add like doc
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Did the auto formatter? Well, a couple things. One,
Okay.
actually, if you go to the group functions doc. So first on 15, I would probably, if it were me, I'd swap the order of those two different case branches.
So
Do you like to fail out earlier?
well, if I do
Oh, no, wait, I see.
yeah, if I do that,
So, yeah.
I could do
So just to see if I understand, if you flip those,
yeah.
group actually it will match on anything.
That's correct. Now,
Okay.
I could do this.
There's nothing magic about that variable. It's just a word. Oh, wow. There's some syntax.
I think this will. Let's just see if this works, because now I'm curious.
Okay.
Whoops. So that would work.
So what's happening?
Okay, so this is basically saying that we're pattern matching that this is a group struct, and you can like this would work too, but of course we want to capture that value, and so you're allowed to capture whatever you pattern match on by just chaining that onto the end.
Got it.
Similarly, like there's
And sorry, can you go back for a sec?
Yeah.
So is this actually saying this is a map whose type is group?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
And like one thing that's just brought this to mind too, like it seems like some people prefer to never like to not do this type of thing where I'm like expecting there's an ID in args. Like potentially a safer thing to do would be like I know I want the ID pulled out of here, and like this should fail if there's no ID in args, and then I could just go like this.
Why do they like that more?
I don't know. I just see that used. Like it just, yeah.
I'm guessing both would blow up.
Both would blow up in just slightly different ways.
Right. I wonder if the error is clearer in this version.
This
something.
would be yeah, unable to pattern match like function if you passed in an args without an ID in it. Whereas
It
this
is a
one,
yeah. It does seem a bit more. This one seems a bit more explicit about the fact, like what your contract is.
yeah,
Like you'd have to sort of read through the function to figure out that args has to have an ID.
yeah,
Whereas now it's like, I need a thing with an ID.
right. So, I mean, I tend to use this pattern.
Yeah, I bet also my guess is if you use a doc stuff here, it will tell you this thing needs an args that has an ID. Whereas the other one just says it needs some args.
Yeah, right. Like the more specific you can be about what you're requiring to be in args, the better, I
Yep.
think. So,
Yep.
so I mean, yeah. Do we like this better? I think this is actually, I mean, and then in this case, this could actually be like, I mean, we could say like either this returns a group or I don't care what else it returns. Like
Right.
anything else, it should be an error.
Yep. Yeah, I kind of like this because before it was nil or anything, and this is now like group or not group.
Group or not group. Yeah, that's better. That's an improvement.
Cool.
Okay.
I'm surprised. My formatting brain wants 25 and 26 to be indented under group. Is that not how that usually works?
It's yeah, this is very much so that's like an Elm thing, right? It always indents
Right.
the pipe.
Yeah.
Whereas Elixir just doesn't. Let me see if it yeah, it moves it back.
Okay. I guess I'll just have to get over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I disagree with that. On the record.
But, formatter always wins, right?
Totally. Yeah. No.
In these,
I don't want to. Yeah.
Um
I wish the world were different, but that's okay.
So, and I haven't really gotten into writing type. What do they call them? Type specs, which you can do in Elixir. Like I could add a little something up here that says what type we expect in here and what it returns. But I haven't gotten proficient at the syntax for those yet.
Gotcha. So things are typed in Elixir just dynamically or ish.
Yeah, like there's some like it's sort of in this vein. There's like support for enforcing types in certain places, and you can add these type specs. And then there's a library called Dialyzer that is like an Erlang thing that will actually verify that the return value and the inputs are matching. Like as much as it can, it'll try to enforce your types, I think.
Does it do like fuzz testing, or does it attempt to analyze like the AST and confirm that you're right?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think it probably just like looks at the AST, in which case it can't. I mean, it can't be perfect because dynamic stuff can happen, But
Sure. The Lizer part of that name makes me think it does an analysis of the AST as opposed to
yeah,
shoving values in and seeing what happens.
yeah. Static analysis tool that identifies software discrepancies, definite type errors. Yeah.
Static analysis. Cool.
And this is one of
nice.
the guys who has been contributing some PRs to the project. Like added this to CI, and
nice.
And then figured out a way to cache it because it takes like 10 minutes to build up like the
whoa,
like the build for this specifically. Like I don't know why it takes so long, and it was causing my laptop sounded like it was going to take off like a rocket when it was running. It's using a lot of CPU, but then you can cache that, and it's fairly stable, and then it runs in like 2 seconds once that's cached. So
great,
yeah,
that's cool. I like it.
Shout out to Devin. Thank you for all your contributions so far. It's been
this open source thing is paying off already.
I think it is. Yeah.
All right.
So what I like to do in here is like put an example of like the possible return values from the function. So like find
I like it.
Group.
So I guess as opposed to, I think Rust does, You can give examples, and it will actually confirm they work.
You can do that in Elixir too.
Cool.
But I find that a majority of my functions are like interacting with the database and doing things that are like I don't know
Yep.
if it can actually do that full. Like I would need like a lot of test setup here, like insert an actual group
Gotcha.
into the database and all that kind of stuff. But for
Right.
simple ones where it's like 1 + 1 = 2,
Mm.
there's a way to do that. Um,
Bad ID, maybe.
yeah, like or whatever, and then these are really just for human consumption.
Hmm. ID is a string, right?
It is actually. These are actually GUIDs, so I don't know if I should like whatever. Or I could just say good ID.
Hmm.
Okay. And this one. Um, let's return Zen. Okay.
It's interesting to me that you're writing like a full doc string for this thing.
Yeah. I feel like it's a nice. So this part, these examples have been super helpful, but perhaps like if I actually get to writing real type specs, like that would be a sufficient replacement for doing all
Mm.
this.
Hmm. You
Like
you
that,
found the examples helpful when you return to old code.
yes. Where I'm like, okay, I need to call this thing from groups, and how do I want to pattern match on the result again? And then I look and see like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, it returns this as opposed to like, one of these
Yeah, yeah,
guys or something, you know.
cool.
So I don't know. I feel like it's nice to have like so far I've just been like rigorous about always documenting all
Yep.
these in the at least in the like the context layer. Like this is a concept from Phoenix where they have these modules called contexts where you're supposed to define your high level functions like these, and then if you want to have like shift some of the implementation if it's more complex into a child like module or one that's just like nested within here, then
Uh-huh.
that can be like that's like not your public API layer, and so that stuff you can choose like I don't document that stuff nearly as much, but at least on this like public API layer, I've been liking to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it seems like a wasn't a criticism. It's just
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Another thing is like we're writing update group and find group,
Mm-hmm.
um, which are things that like something like Rails would give you
Mm-hmm.
out of the box. It's kind of an interesting choice.
Well, I think so. I mean, I could definitely just do this in in that resolver, but my
Okay.
choice is to instead shift that into here so that when I decide I want to actually scope this by, user and like determine permissions on are they allowed to see this group or not, like I can isolate that logic over here. So
Sure.
that's like really the motivation for doing this as opposed to just like going straight to like repo.get in there.
Hmm. Okay.
I don't think I made any breaking changes, but let's just double check. Okay. Shall we commit this, sucker?
Yeah. Let's check out our diff though, maybe.
Yeah. So we're fetching a group ID. That's good. We're updating a group. We define this update change set. We have our resolver.
Do you want to test the unhappy path?
We probably should actually because I think this will I actually think this is going to cause problems if this were to fail.
We could also just we also have been doing this for a little bit, so maybe we just call this good and then make a little to do to test the unhappy.
Yeah. Just keep perusing through here. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Right on master.
Oh, damn it.
Just noticed that.
All right, get master.
It's all right.
What's the I want to move this to a branch, but like what's the
Nah, YOLO, get pushed, go for it.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
No, okay. All right, let's see how the get foo is. All right, so we just put a thing on master. All right, just check out a new branch right where we are.
Okay.
Cool. Now, if you go back to master, you can do a get reset hard -- hard to head tilde.
Tilde. That's it.
Try that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that just says like put master one commit back.
One commit back, and
we still have that other one where we have the
awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I did the same thing in my last video. Just committed straight to master. No.
Do you have yeah, totally. Do you have an aliases thing for ZSH?
Yeah, I do.
Because you could totally make an alias for this right now, so you would never have to remember how to do this again.
Oh, okay. I'm game. Where does it's
so in your home directory there should be a dot. Maybe you have a dot files thing, or
yeah. So I'm doing dot files.
Okay.
And then I have dot aliases. Okay.
So either would work. Oh, look at that. Get aliases. I should separate mine by use case. That'd be cool. Yeah. All right. So what do you think of? Oh, if we do an alias, well, so if we made it a function instead of an alias, you could give it a name. So I'm imagining a command called like branchify. It takes a new branch name and then grabs the last commit, makes a branch for it, and resets master back one commit.
Okay. Yeah. I have like zero bash foo. So
me too.
Okay.
Are you using ZSH or bash?
ZSH. Yeah.
Okay. So I can actually just pull it up on my machine. Let me see how I did it last time I did this.
Cool.
Do you? So you're probably going to need to go into your ZSH RC.
Okay. Okay.
Mine. Then dot file zish functions. Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward. All right. So you type function and the name of the function, and then a curly.
Should I just put this at the bottom of this file?
Sure.
It could go in I'm like sourcing my aliases file. I could just put it in that git file probably, right?
If you're okay with it not being an alias, but yeah.
Well, I should just rename it to like things or something.
Stuff. Sure. Stuff. All right, cool. So
okay.
functions, or function, and then a name.
Okay, branchify.
Kind of like branchify.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yep, and then curly, or space curly. And then new line. And then here comes the body of your function, and whatever you want. And basically, $1 will be like the first argument to this thing.
Okay.
So I think you want. So I'm assuming you just did it, and you go, "Oh crap, I meant to do this." And so you would type branchify, new branch, and so we'll do like a get checkout -b, and then $1.
Okay.
And then you could just new line. Get. So okay. We'll do it the simple way. Get checkout master, and then new line. Get reset -- hard head tilde, and then I guess you could go back to your new branch. Get checkout -b $1. This is silly. I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but I bet this will work.
Yeah. Interesting. And I don't need like these new lines are sufficient. I don't need like semicolons or anything in here.
Seems to be sufficient based on the stuff I'm reading right now.
Okay.
So
Cool. All right.
let's just see if it works.
Okay.
So you can source this file from your shell just by typing source.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Should I just like do a dummy commit or something?
So if you do it, so it's hard coded to master.
Yeah.
So yes, you could go to master and then do a commit. Just type something, yeah. Good choice.
Oh.
You have to add. Yeah, there you go.
What?
Oh.
I thought that worked. AM, maybe not. Okay. And then I'm going to branchify.
Yeah.
Dummy.
Yeah. So check your Git history or Git log for this branch.
Okay.
There's that. If you go to master, is it back on where it should be?
It is. Sweet. Okay.
Cool. So if you wanted to be so one thing that's kind of annoying is you're getting that like output. Yeah. I bet there's a way to
suppress.
Oh yeah. So
is there like a non-verbose like? Isn't there like a?
Well, we don't have to actually check out master. We could just you could delete 24 and pass in master explicitly to get reset.
Oh.
I bet.
Okay.
Like actually don't know which position. Probably that. Yeah, that probably works.
Okay.
You could get reset if you want, or I could do it.
Get the stupid content tracker.
Yeah. No, there's a try git dash reset.
Yeah, you're right.
Get. Yeah. So git reset. Yeah, treeish is the first thing.
Okay.
Master counts.
Sweet. So I don't need to check out.
And that will suppress that thing where your branch is ahead, I suspect.
Okay.
And actually, then we don't need 25 either. Lols.
Oh. Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Awesome.
Refactoring.
Yeah, refactoring our functions. Should I document this? Probably.
I don't know. Our name's so good.
I know. Let's see. Something like that.
Into it.
Okay, and so this is. What?
Just if you wanted to be safe, I might, instead of doing 2 lines here, I might throw them together with an and. Because if your checkout fails for some reason, you might blow away what's on master. You'll still have it, like you could go get it, but it'll be annoying.
Yeah, it would be like somewhere in the ether of Shaz.
Yep.
Okay.
The ether of Shaz. Good band.
That's a band name right there. Okay. Let me just let's see. So this is let's see, get branch d dummy. Okay. Delete that dummy.
The first time you use this, I would like a text message, please.
Okay. For sure. Dot.
What's DF doing?
That's like that's my shortcut for. So the way I'm managing my dot files is like a bare Git repository, and df. Yeah, actually, my README on my dot files repo explains the methodology, but
gotcha. I'll RTFM then.
Yeah.
Cool. Also, line 9 in your Git thing is interesting. I like that.
This, yeah,
Yeah.
this I like totally ripped off from somebody without credit.
Yeah, I figured. It's a
Just
cool
writing my
idea.
sed, and my
Yeah.
links.
I didn't think you were writing that much said.
Since I just told you I have zero
Yeah.
hash foo.
But it's a cool idea. It's like red and green. I don't need pluses.
Mm-hmm.
Clever. Cool. You want to wrap it? We
Uh,
done?
yeah. We are. It's
Cool.
been a
This is
few
a fun
hours.
sesh.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about that?
Cool. Let me bring you back up if you want to show your face one more time.
Okay, sure. Where am I? Here we go. Hello. Still here.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Well, this was fun.
Yeah, this was fun. I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, I'll throw this up on the YouTubes.
Cool.
Sweet.
Well, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Folks.
Until next time.